Hello everyone, and welcome to my new series of webinars around AT for Common Core College and Career Readiness. My name is Tana, and I am the President of Educational Equity for All, an educational consulting business out of California. I focus on supporting teachers, staff, administrators, and parents who work with or have students who have significant cognitive disabilities. I have workshops on a variety of topics in curriculum and instruction, programming, and professional development. So before we get started today, let's go ahead and find out a little bit more about who is with us, who's joining us. So if you'll go ahead and fill out the survey, we can see who's on this conference call with us and tailor it to your needs. Okay. It looks like we have quite a few practitioners and some family members. I want to welcome you all to this new series of Assistive Technology and Common Core, really taking a look at the college and career readiness. We did provide this webinar a little bit later in the day so that those who are working might be able to join us. So we'll just give it a few more minutes to see if anyone else wants to participate in this survey. Okay, let's go ahead and close the poll, and we'll move on. As I said, it looks like we have quite a few practitioners and some administrators, some folks who are able to join us due to the hour of the webinar. So I want to welcome you all once again, and as we get started, take a look at our agenda. Today we're going to take a look at defining what college and career readiness for students with significant cognitive disabilities really means. We're going to talk about how we can provide support to those students that have those significant cognitive disabilities around the Common Core support of college and career readiness. To start off, we're going to introduce the first element of communicative competency. And as the webinars continue through the next couple months, we'll address each of the other components. We're going to look at communicative competency through the lens of augmentative and alternative communication. We're going to look at what those specific goals might be. Then we're going to delve right into universal design for learning, talk a little bit about that and how each of the three principles of universal design for learning can be accommodated through assistive technology and AAC. Of course, then we have to take a look at our Common Core state standards. We will be bringing in both Dynamic Learning Maps and the National Center and State Collaborative and their viewpoints on communicative competency. And then we'll wrap up the webinar with some resources for you. At any time, you can ask questions by typing in your questions in the chat room, and we'll be able to address those as we go. So taking a look at defining college and career readiness. What does that mean? There's lots and lots of rhetoric out there around Common Core state standards and college and career readiness for all. This is a definition of college and career readiness for typical high school students. It addresses 4 areas: key cognitive strategies, key content, academic behaviors, and contextual skills and awareness. Oftentimes we take a look at working with our students with significant cognitive disabilities, and it's very difficult to try to fit them into the typical high school student's experience and expectations for college and career readiness. When we look at those post-secondary programs about opportunities for our students, when we talk about college and career readiness, we do want to take a look at academic and instructional opportunities. We want to look at employment and career pathways, of course, independent living, and then the social avenues. Each of these are components of our transition plan. So we do want to tie those into our college and career readiness. In our career readiness, we look at employability skills for all. Tony Wagner, in his article on Rigor Redefined, talked with Mike Summers of Dell, and they had a conversation around expectations for young people in communicating verbal skills and written presentation skills. The conclusion was that young people today have difficulty being clear and concise. It's hard for them to create focus, energy, and passion around the points they want to make. Tony Wagner talks about 7 survival skills around that, with critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration and leadership, agility and adaptability, initiative and entrepreneurialism, and then of course effective oral and written communication. And then accessing and analyzing information, and curiosity and imagination. Basically those 21st century skills that we keep hearing a lot about. When we take a look at the structure of Common Core and the goals of Common Core, we see that there's a lot of discussion around bringing in that college and career and community element with curriculum, instruction, and assessment. This triangle comes out of the work by NCSC, and notice what's at the bottom. The foundation of this pyramid is communicative competency. Communicative competency is at the heart of everything we're dealing with Common Core state standards and college and career readiness. Those NCSC partners are discussing it around these 5 elements, and these are based on discussions from Hearn, Kleiner, Harrison, and Shepard-Jones, and Hall and Jones in 2011. This article is actually on one of the website resources you will see at the end of this presentation. The number 1 element for college and career readiness is maximizing communicative competency. That is the foundation, and that is the number 1 element that we want to address today. The next element we'll be addressing in the next webinar, and each of the following will be addressed in other webinars as well. Full access to academic content, development of appropriate social skills, development of independent work behaviors, and of course support access skills, or identifying skills for requesting support. Remember, when we're talking about college and career readiness and we're talking about the dilemma between IEP goals and state standards or the Common Core state standards, those IEP goals, which tend to be functional, can be taught as part of those academic lessons. We still teach those functional skills that our kids need embedded in the context of an academic lesson. The learning process itself is one of the benefits that comes out of the functional skills and the academic lesson. Excuse me. One of the first things we need to look at when we talk about communicative competency and we talk about college and career readiness and we look at those Common Core state standards is presuming competence. Presuming competence that our kids can do it. Yes, we may need to adapt it. Yes, we may need to adjust it, but our kids can do it. We just need to make sure this is a mindset that all of our staff are on board with, presuming competence. everyone can learn regardless of severity of disability. The other piece, of course, is the least dangerous assumption. When we talk about least dangerous assumption, this is where we go into exposing students to everything, exposing our students to all of the general education curriculum. The law does not say we have to master all the content, but we have to expose our kids to it. Exposing students to learning is not harmful. However, keeping them from it is. We want to do our due diligence in exposing our kids to a typical high school experience or school experience. So let's get right into communicative competency. Communication is the essence of human life. That's what we're all about. In 1989, Light defined communicative competency for individuals with complex communication needs who require augmentative and alternative communication as dynamic interpersonal constructs based on functionality of communication. Communicative competency is not a new concept, but now we've got it put together with our Common Core state standards and our college and career readiness. Light talked about these areas of functionality of communication, is adequacy of communication, and sufficiency of knowledge, judgment, and skills. Specifically, Light argued that in order to demonstrate communicative competency, individuals who required AAC had to develop and integrate knowledge, judgment, and skills in 4 interrelated domains: linguistic, operational, social, and strategic. Later, Light went on to expand this definition in 2003 and argued that the attainment of communicative competency is influenced by not just linguistic, operational, social, and strategic competencies, but also a variety of psychosocial factors like motivation, attitude, confidence, and resilience, as well as barriers and supports in the environment. These are all elements we want to take a look at when we begin to build these lessons and engage our kids in college and career readiness activities. NCSC has put together a list of communication beliefs since it is the foundation of the pyramid that we are working from. I really like these beliefs because I think it speaks to how we work with our kids. A lot of these are around the mindset we have with our students, that all individuals communicate regardless of age or disability or severity of disability. All output, whether it's gestures, cries, and noises, is communicative. We know this because all behavior has a communicative intent. Communication at some level is possible and identifiable for all students regardless of functional level. How are your students communicating things with you? Do your students have intentional communication that you can identify? We go on to talk about communication goals should increase opportunities for integration and interactions with peers and the community in general. Notice how it ties back to college and career readiness. Students with the most significant disabilities benefit from interactions with typical peers. This is the social piece. And of course it goes the other way. Typical peers benefit from interactions with students with the most significant disabilities. And there is no more fundamental outcome of education than the right and ability to communicate. When NCSC came up with these communication beliefs, these are the foundational pieces that lead to all the instructional support that they offer. So broadly speaking, in more general terms, in other words, we talk about communication occurs with at least one other person and in the context of the environment and serves the following functions: to indirectly control the environment, for example, to obtain or reject something; to regulate social interactions, for example, to express an emotion or interact with a friend; and to receive and convey information and ideas. I see there are some questions around NCSC. NCSC is the National Center and State Collaborative, and later on we're going to talk a little bit more about how they bring into focus the college and career readiness pieces and more specifically the communicative competency pieces. They are one of the two alternate assessment collaboratives, and their supports are out there and public for anyone to be able to use. So later on I'm going to show you the resources of how to find those pieces and as they tie to the exact Common Core state standards. Let's talk about the goals of augmentative and alternative communication and how they tie to our classroom and our state standards. The primary goal of augmentative communication is essentially to be able to effectively communicate with others and be a contributing member of our society. As we said, communication is part of our humanity. Light also went on to break it down even further and talk about it in 4 elements: expression of needs and wants, information transfer, social closeness, and social etiquette. So those are the summary pieces of the other ones we talked about. And today, we're going to address just the first 2, expression of needs and wants, or obtaining something, and then the second one talking about transfer of information. When we talk about expressing needs and wants, it's an important communication or interaction that occurs that oftentimes we're writing our goals around, our IEP goals around expression of needs and wants. These also can come into play when we are working with standards and when we're setting up our activities, our standards-based instruction, and our activities around Common Core, whether it's asking for directions, ordering food at a restaurant, requesting a grocery item at the store. All these needs and wants can be tied to learning vocabulary. There are standards for that in our English language arts. It could be around math and all of the interactions we have with the functional interactions around math. However, when we get to the second one, information transfer, this more is about asking and responding to questions, learning those vocabulary words, talking about a science lesson or a story we've read. This is communicating in detail on a wide variety of topics. So the goal of information transfer is to share information with others. Whether it's telling your best friend what you did this past weekend or telling your classmates how your evening went, explaining something. The idea is not to obtain something as in the expression of needs and wants, but rather to communicate in detail on a wide variety of topics. Transferring information to a communicative partner may require a much longer interaction than expressing a need and want. However, an augmentative communication device or an AT device might allow the user to share such information with others in order to successfully participate in an educational setting or looking at enhancing future vocational opportunities. When we look at Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, we can absolutely see how assistive technology can come into play to support those 3 principles. And the 3 principles of Universal Design for Learning is multiple means of representation, multiple means of expression, and multiple means of engagement. CAST.org is a wonderful resource that lays out each of these principles and support for each of these principles. Again, that would be CAST.org. And each of these guiding principles, if you are able to look at the individual support, is providing options for perception, providing options for language, mathematical expression and symbols, providing options for comprehension, providing options for physical action, providing options for expression and communication, providing options for executive functioning, providing options for recruiting interest. How do we keep our kids engaged? Providing options for sustaining effort and persistence, and providing options for self-regulation. There's numerous tools that can be used to support each of these with assistive technology and augmentative communication, especially when we think back to our lessons. We know that it can be from no-tech all the way up to high-tech systems to do this, whether it's for lessons or it's for assessment. And as we look at the new assessment systems, we look at how we can provide access for our kids. The same way we provide access to the assessments is the way that we can provide access to the instruction. We can use pictures, we can use graphical communication books, not to forget eye gaze techniques. And in fact, many of the supports that are out there for instruction actually provide ideas and supports about what kind of assistive technology or AAC need to be used for each of the standards or activities. Of course, we have VOCAs or speech-generating devices. There's lots of different programs that actually incorporate these. AbleNet, of course, has several pieces that incorporate these devices and show teachers how to use them, how to walk through the lessons and providing the support and access to your kids. More of that can be found on the AbleNet website with Equals or STEM or MeBuild or WeBuild. These are some of the programs that are wonderful for tying all of those pieces together. Mid-tech or high-tech systems, many of us have used these in our classrooms for a long time, so we're very familiar with them. Some people feel more comfortable with some of the basic systems. Some people feel more comfortable with the high-tech systems. Now we have quite the selection with iPads available and tablets available. A lot of these we can see being used with the assessments as well as instruction. Let me go ahead and provide that website once again for the Universal Design for Learning. It's CAST, CAST.org. There's many websites out there that have professional development modules already put together that can be used for staff training that are free, that are great for professional learning communities or communities of practice, where as a team we can sit down and take a look at how we can incorporate our assistive technology into the principles of UDL. Some of those websites include the CAST.org, CAST.org. Another one is the IRIS Institute out of Vanderbilt Peabody. And that one would have to be Googled. I don't have that website available right now. I think I have included some of those resources at the end of the PowerPoint, at the end of the webinar. You can always ask a question, or you can email me at a later date, and we have lots of those resources available. Let's get right into our Common Core state standards. And sometimes districts have done a great job about including our special ed teachers and providing parents information around Common Core state standards for special ed, especially are those students with significant cognitive disabilities. Sometimes those teachers and those parents have been left out. Right now I'm just going to give you a little bit about the college and career readiness piece of the Common Core state standards and where you can find further information on that. Remember, we're just talking about the first element today, and that's the communicative competency. When we talk about the National Center and State Collaborative, They have a series of supports that are out there on the website of National Center and State Collaborative. One of those resources and supports is the Curriculum Resource Guide. In the Curriculum Resource Guides, there are 6 pieces, 6 parts, and one of those parts specifically addresses the college and career readiness element. For every Common Core state standard and the topic area, for example, data analysis, they address how to teach data analysis for all the levels, grades 3 through 12, for each of the college and career readiness pieces. So, for example, we could talk about data analysis and how we address communicative competency, how we address social skills, teaching data analysis, how we address the independent work skills for data analysis. On this slide, I've shown you for math how I can further promote college and career readiness when teaching data analysis. In the Curriculum Resource Guide, they go through and they specifically give you examples. Student will increase vocabulary to include concepts related to data analysis. In addition, they'll be learning concepts such as more, less, most, least, same, different, average, about, and graph. So you can see on this slide we address data analysis, equations, measurement and geometry, fractions and decimals, and ratio and proportion. These are each of the topic areas under math for your Common Core state standards. Again, in the resource guide, they provide examples of how to go back and teach these concepts through the lens of the college and career readiness element. Okay. Once again, I've got a question about the UDL website, and that is cast.org, and it's a website that will give you lots of information around universal design for learning. Okay. When we go back to the NCSC, we can also see it in ELA. So we have reading informational text, vocabulary acquisition and use, and reading literacy text. These are the elements of ELA Common Core state standards and how we can look at them through the lens of the college and career readiness. For those of you who are in states that don't use the National Center and State Collaborative as your alternate assessment, Dynamic Learning Maps also addresses, oops, let me go back. Oops. Okay, Dynamic Learning Maps also addresses it through their connection with the essential elements. And the essential elements break it down and correspond to the college and career readiness standards. So when you look at those essential elements, you'll be able to see how those are addressing the college and career readiness standards of Common Core. Okay, we have a question about what kind of tech an iPad might be. Well, it certainly wouldn't be a no-tech. It might be a low-tech or a mid-tech, depending on how you're using it and what you're doing with it and how much it takes to, when we go back to look at the low-tech and mid-tech, here's your mid-tech. Any combination system that requires a power source and requires some level of training to adequately program and maintain. Some of us need a lot of support in learning how to program and maintain an iPad. Some people it comes a lot more naturally and intuitively. When we talk about resources that are out there, I do want to give you resources for AAC Classroom. Of course, there's a few on here that should be very familiar to you around the use of assistive technology and AAC in your classrooms. But information on communicative competency, I've included a PDF resource for parents and teachers and professionals on the ncscpartners.org website. There's also modules on there for professional development that can be used, again, in your PLCs, your professional learning communities, or your communities of practice. On the Wiki page, which I have on here under Common Core Standards, College and Career Readiness, that's the ncscpartners.org Wiki page. Under Curriculum Resource Guides, and the Curriculum Resource Guides are where you're going to find in Section 5 the College and Career Readiness piece. Those pieces will tie back to instruction for each of those topic areas. So if we go back to these topic areas, that's what you will find on the Wiki page. It's wiki.ncscpartners.org. So if you take a look at that website, that web page, and you look at Curriculum Resource Guides, you'll be able to find these elements. I do want to let you know about another resource. It is a monthly AT newsletter that I put out with my company, Educational Equity for All. It's the world of assistive technology. In that newsletter, it's a very short electronic newsletter. I do provide different kinds of supports and information and tidbits around assistive technology and AAC. It will begin to have a lot more information around Common Core and strategies to include that in your activities and lessons. Along with the world of AT, there are 5 other newsletters that come out on a monthly basis. So I do want to offer those to any of our participants. I also want to point out that this webinar, along with the following series of webinars, are available as a training, a regular workshop for a professional development day. What is the question I have is, what is the name of the last page? Are we talking about resources? Common Core Standards, College and Career Readiness Resources might be the Wiki page. And I recommend that if you haven't taken a look at it, it's out there available in public, along with the Dynamic Learning Map standards and the correlation with the College and Career Readiness Common Core standards. And I want to give some time for questions, if there's questions that we may be able to answer regarding UDL or communicative competency. This particular webinar did not go into a lot of the devices, simply because many of those devices are addressed on other webinars, and because many of those devices are already used in our classroom. Now the challenge is making use of those devices for instruction in Common Core, breaking down those particular standards and looking at how we can provide access to our students. Okay, the question is, we have another question about access to the World of AT newsletter. All of those newsletters are available at this website. This is my company. This is the website. The MISSTANAD or MISSTANAD@educationalequityforall.net. I want to make sure you all have the resources that you may need for each of these pieces. Once again, one of the website resources for UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, is CAST.org, CAST.org. And there are lots of other trainings and workshops that I offer around UDL and around Common Core, state standards, and special ed, specifically more on the supports that are available through NCSC, since those are that is the supports that come from NCSC are available to anyone, but they also lead to the NCSC assessment. So if your state does not use the NCSC assessment and you use dynamic learning maps, there's lots of those supports that go across the board. The instructional supports that we're presenting to you today are available to anyone focusing on Common Core state standards. To make it clear, that website for UDL is CAST, as in C for cat.org, CAST.org. And we'll give everyone a few more minutes for questions. I'd also like to remind you about the upcoming webinars on the rest of the college and career readiness pieces. The next webinar will be addressing the academic piece. So we'll be looking at the reading, and the ELA, and the math, primarily Common Core pieces around those. The other ones will be independent living, work skills, and social skills. We do have another question about signing up for the newsletter. If you just email me, I'll put you on the distribution list, and you'll be able to receive them on a monthly basis. They come out the first week of the month. They do come in electronic format, and you will end up receiving all of them. If you'd like to pass them on, please feel free to do so. If you're not interested in a particular one, then you don't have to open it. There are different colors, and there's lots and lots of resources within those newsletters that I hope you find valuable and you'll be able to utilize. I do put a lot of information in there about strategies and resources for free professional development, free tips and tricks and ideas, lots of information for teachers around the specific topic areas. The preschool one addresses preschool issues, autism, of course, paraeducators, adult transition, the 18 to 22 student population, and then a general one for moderate to severe disabilities. I do include a piece for assistive technology in each of those as well, specific to that student population. For administrators, there is another newsletter that comes out that has a lot of information for special ed as it relates to things that are going on nationally. Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for participating in this webinar and taking time out of your busy schedules and your busy evenings. I want to hope that you will be able to join us for another time. I'd like to send a thank you out to AbleNet for hosting this webinar. And as we begin to take a look at this whole idea of college and career readiness and the fact that our kids now that have significant cognitive disabilities are included in the expectations for improved post-secondary outcomes and increased rigor, taking a look at Common Core, that as we journey together, we will find new and innovative ways to engage our kids with multiple means of expression, representation, and engagement. So thank you all very much, and I hope to see you on another webinar.